Good evening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Gotti Schwartz coming to you from Los Angeles, and here's some of the stories we're following tonight. We're seeing more wild weather all across the country. Snow, heavy rain, and even tornadoes.
Power line just fell right in front of me. That almost hit my car.
Up in the mountains of California, tens of thousands got snowed in, including hundreds of students at a science camp.
I haven't seen him in, oh man, it seems like forever, so really glad he's back.
Plus, could the government actually cancel your student loan debt? The Supreme Court seems a bit skeptical.
Fundamentally, we have a crisis across this country when it comes to access to higher education.
And the EPA is trying to set the record straight about toxic chemicals in East Palestine, Ohio.
Let me be clear, EPA is testing for all toxic chemicals. We have a complete inventory of everything that was on that train.
And NASA is looking to send astronauts back to the moon, but what time is it up there? Well, that's a question that's a lot more complicated than you'd think, and it's a good thing we've got former astronaut Mike Massimino joining us to talk space-time. And storms barreling across the country right now have over 33 million people under winter weather alerts. States throughout the Northeast woke up to several inches of heavy, slick snow. There have been dozens of crashes in Connecticut. New York City just got under 2 inches of snow, which puts them right on track to break the record for the least snowiest year on record. But out here in the West, there is so much more snow, much more intense of a story. Blizzards have blanketed the region for the past 2 days. Highways are virtually impassable in parts of the state. San Bernardino County is under a state of emergency. 50,000 people in the state have lost power, and this storm system is not done yet. Parts of the Sierra Nevadas could get another 4 feet in the coming days. It's so snowy that police deputies are turning to snowmobiles to check on people in Placer County. And where there isn't snow in California, there is rain, and lots of it. A hillside collapsing in Los Angeles, causing a mudslide and nearly taking out a home with it. NBC's Miguel Almaguer has more.
Before sunrise, the state of emergency was ordered in the mountains just outside Los Angeles. Already buried under as much as 7 feet of snow, trapped residents in San Bernardino County are rationing food and running short on supplies as another major snowstorm barrels in.
Crazy storm. Never experienced this kind of weather before.
In Lake Arrowhead, Griffith Vertican hiked a mile through waist-deep snow to get to a gas station. Major roads are impassable, and many, like Teresa Grant, are stranded.
We haven't seen a plow in days.
The jackknife.
This once-in-a-generation storm shutting down more than 70 miles of Interstate 80, a lifeline for commerce.
Luckily, I have my dad with me, otherwise I'd be panicking.
Nationwide, more than 10 million are under winter weather alerts. New York City today with its first significant snowfall as thunderstorms and the threat of tornadoes close in on the south. But back on the West Coast, another whiteout is on the way.
Gotti, travel isn't just treacherous. In parts of California, it's impossible. This car is buried under several feet of snow, and as you know, another storm is in the forecast. It could bring 75-mile-per-hour winds and another foot of snow. Gotti?
Miguel, thank you. Snowed in at science camp. Sounds possibly fun, right? Well, maybe for the kids, but not for the Orange County parents who have been nervously awaiting their return home. For hundreds of students last week, a trip to science camp quickly turned into an unforgettable lesson on precipitation. Here's Anusha Rasta from our NBC4 station with more.
Excited?
Yeah. After spending an extra 3 cold days in the mountains.
We had a good time, but, you know, the extended stay, it's ready to end.
Hundreds of Orange County students finally made their way back home with a California Highway Patrol escort today.
I just wish we would have got to get it out before the storm.
Students from at least 2 Orange County school districts were supposed to return home from a trip on Friday, but they got snowed in Running Springs and in Crestline, after last week's record-breaking storm.
It was a science camp, but this is a life lesson for them. How to deal with, adapt to change, and how to deal with things that come up unexpectedly. And that's the life lesson they get out of this.
Dangerous road conditions made it impossible to bus the students back late last week.
This is definitely the worst it's been, the worst I've ever seen as far as the storm goes.
The CHP, together with Caltrans, made sure the school bus drivers had a safe place to pull over and remove those chains to make their way to the bottom of the mountain in the city of Highland, where many worried parents waited to pick up their kids.
Feels amazing, man. I haven't seen him in, oh man, it seems like forever. So really glad he's back. I missed him.
The students telling NBC4 it was an unforgettable trip.
It was pretty fun, even though we were stuck there. It's pretty fun.
But they're glad to be going home.
Watched a lot of movies.
Yeah?
Yeah. Watched a lot of movies.
And let's now bring in NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns, who's probably going to tell us there's a lot more of this in store. Bill, California has been through it this week, last week, seemingly every other week since wildfire season. How much more is headed for the state?
Gotti, I'm seeing a lot of people from Los Angeles posting, I need L.A. to start feeling like L.A. again, because a lot of people are just cold. And I mean, it's kind of cool for a couple of days to wear like your winter coat and wear like the winter gear.
Yeah,
and then everyone's like, all right, like I've worn this. Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're done. So I guess people in LA really can't complain too much compared to what the rest of the state's going through. We have another 90,000 people without power because of this latest storm that's been moving through. And the worst of it is the high winds throughout the high train of the Sierra. That's where we're seeing a blizzard once again all day long. All the passes are closed. Interstate 80's been closed all day, and it's impossible to drive throughout these regions. You can't get to the ski resorts, and the people at the ski resorts can't leave the ski resorts until this storm is gone. I mean, we've seen incredible snowfall rates. The UC Berkeley Snow Lab, they reported 3 feet of snow in 24 hours. I mean, that you can't keep up with that. There's no plows that can keep up with that. And that's what's happening right now all through Yosemite down to Bishop and in areas around Mammoth Lakes. That's where the blizzard warning is. And then tonight and tomorrow, we will see some of this heading down through Southern California. The mountains outside of LA, once again, will get some significant snow. Not as bad as last week, but still a big event. And then Flagstaff, 1 to 2 feet. Even the Grand Canyon Rim could get up to a foot of snow. Salt Lake City, about 4 inches for you. Denver, only about 1 or 2, so not a huge ordeal for you. But the Sierra Nevada, again, another 2 to 4 feet likely. Then we're going to take this storm in the days ahead. This looks like about a Wednesday night, Thursday, more snow for Nebraska. Omaha could get enough to shovel and plow. Same with Des Moines. It looks to be about Chicago northwards for your best chance of accumulating snow. And then Friday night into Saturday, just like this last storm, it looks like north of New York City, your best chance for accumulating snows. A lot of areas will go snow to freezing rain and sleet and then over to rain. So we're going to have some issues with that. And if that wasn't enough, another winter severe weather outbreak is possible. It'll start tomorrow night in areas around Little Rock to Memphis. But the big day, Gotti, is going to be on Thursday. We could see numerous strong tornadoes once again. And Gotti, these are the same exact cities that we've been talking about all winter long. From Dallas to Little Rock to Memphis, Louisiana and Mississippi. They've seen enough. I know they're sick of it, but we're going to do it all over again.
It seems like everybody gets a 1, 2, 3 day break, and then it's back to square one. NBC's Bill Cairns, thanks so much. In East Palestine, Ohio, people are still afraid, and we're not talking about the threat of another train derailment, but some are concerned about the water they've been bathing in, the parks they've been walking their dogs in. Today, EPA Administrator Michael Regan was on the ground to hear about those fears firsthand.
We're worried about our animals being outside, like in the grass or something, but those chemicals being in the dirt or in the grass or anything.
Yeah, that's a question that I've heard a lot about, and I think that we are looking into the soil testing.
So will you guys test like our track and field before we hold anything?
I think we'll have air monitoring equipment either in close proximity, or if we need to do something indoors, we will.
Now, this is Regan's third visit to East Palestine since the train derailment and chemical leak on February 6th. Now the EPA and other agencies are telling Norfolk Southern to clean up its mess, literally. Regan gave an idea of what that might happen if they do not comply.
If the company refuses to do any work, we can fine them up to $70,000 a day. We will immediately step in to do that work because we don't want to break in service. I think that's a really good incentive for them to be on their best behavior.
All this as the EPA announced the launch of a trace atmospheric gas analyzer mobile laboratory, which is the science talk for a mobile lab van, which will be used to monitor air quality at the site. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen joins us now. Ron, what's the latest there in East Palestine?
Well, the latest is, to some extent, Gotti, the same, because, again, as you pointed out, this is Michael Regan's third trip there in the last 3 weeks, and some of the questions that he's getting from the residents are the same, because they simply don't trust what he and state officials are telling them about the air and the water. There's been constant testing going on since shortly after the derailment. And what the EPA and others keep telling the residents is that things are safe, and they just don't believe him. So they're bringing in more equipment. They're appearing there more. They've now scheduled daily 4 p.m. briefings. The CDC has sent representatives there who are going door to door in the community to try and address neighbors, residents' concerns. They've set up a mobile clinic there where residents can go and get a health evaluation if they are concerned about headaches and rashes and sore throats and things of that nature that we've been hearing reports of, and if they are concerned about the long-term consequences, potentially, of having all this toxic material in their community. So there's a process going on that I think most experts would tell you is going to take a while. There's been a lot of trauma in that community. There's a lot of distress and a lot of fear in that community, and that's not gone away in the past few weeks, as again and again officials have said to them that we're doing more testing, we're doing more sampling. It's constant, and it's all coming back to say that the environment is safe. The testing has extended further out. You heard some of the students there asking about the soil. There's a lot of farmland in that community around East Palestine, and farmers are concerned about their crops. When I was there last week, we were talking to a farmer who lives several miles away from the derailment site. Remember, the evacuation zone was about a mile or so radius. This is a farmer who lives 3 miles away and who self-evacuated, if you will, and she's concerned because it's time to put crops into the ground. So again, they are trying to reassure the residents that the environment is safe and that they will hold the train company accountable. And there is, as Mr. Regan put it, just a huge deficit of trust there. Trust that's not going away.
Trust is hard to forge in this day. Ron, thanks so much. And now let's go to the Supreme Court, where this was the scene earlier today.
Hey, ho, ho! Student debt has got to go! Hey, ho, ho! Student debt has got to go!
Supporters rallying in favor of Biden's student loan forgiveness plan while the court debated its legality. Justices heard oral arguments today on 2 cases, both trying to answer one central question. Does President Biden have the authority to cancel student debt? That's a question that could impact over 40 million Americans. Joining us now is NBC legal analyst Joyce Vance. Joyce, we know there are 2 cases involved here, and a lot of this has to do with whether student loans are given out by private companies or by the state, which I remember from school was always kind of confusing when you're talking about like FAFSA federal loans and then you see a bank name attached to this, right? How important is it separating those out?
Well, it's a confusing scenario, as you write out, but I think the place that we have to start is this. Much of the public discourse has been about the policy debate, whether it's a good idea or not to cancel student loan. And that's not what the court is considering here. The issue, clearly Congress could do this if they chose to. The issue is whether the executive branch has the ability to do that. And so that's determined by a pair of statutes, the National Emergency Act from 1976, a more recent act called the HEROES Act. And as people, I think, can readily understand, there's the importance of delegating some emergency level powers to the executive branch. It's more nimble than Congress. It can act more readily. But there are also questions of potential abuse. For instance, during World War II, when President Roosevelt decided to inter Japanese Americans in a case called Korematsu, that was really something of a national disgrace, not remedied till recently. All that is to say this is deeply complex, and it is far more about constitutional law and the development of that body than the issues we're looking at here. You know, to your point, we have different plaintiffs who are differently situated. One of the big issues the court grappled with today was whether anyone had standing to sue. To have standing, you have to be harmed. You have to be in proximity to the defendant who you say is harming you, and there must be some sort of remedy that the courts can deliver. So before the court even gets to the substance of this matter, they'll have to decide whether any parties have standing.
I want to play part of what we heard from Chief Justice John Roberts today. He makes an interesting comparison. Take a listen.
We take very seriously the idea of separation of powers, and that power should be divided to prevent its abuse. And there are many procedural niceties that have to be followed for the same purpose. The case reminds me of the one we had a few years ago under a different administration, where the administration tried, acting on its own, to cancel the Dreamers program. And we blocked that effort.
I don't know about you, but that does not sound all that promising for the Biden administration here. What else did we hear from the justices today?
Well, I think your assessment is correct. The justices seemed split along ideological lines. Many of the conservative justices seem to believe that the major questions doctrine was being invoked here, a doctrine that says in big, broad policy initiatives, it's inappropriate for the executive branch or for an administrative agency to act without a clear grant of authority from Congress. The more progressive justices said, though, that Congress had clearly spoken in the HEROES Act and the NEA, and that the executive branch here, the Biden administration and its administrative agencies, were acting within that grant of power. So it's a pretty sharp divide. I think you're right to say it did not look like the court was inclined to give the relief the Biden administration is seeking for student borrowers.
Is it safe to say that we're not going to see a decision anytime soon?
I think that that's fair to say. You know, the average is the court decides cases about 3 months after they're argued. But in these most serious cases every term, you'll see 3, 4, 5 cases held until June for decision, sometimes even into that first week of July. This is shaping up to be a pair of cases because, as you point out, it's more than just one case. Differently situated plaintiffs, very likely that the cases will be combined for one decision based on what we heard in court today. But I think we're looking at very late in the term.
Well, stay tuned, Joyce. Thank you. And we want to get to some breaking news out here in Los Angeles. Vanessa Bryant has settled her lawsuit against Los Angeles County for nearly $29 million. She sued after county employees took and shared graphic photos of the helicopter crash that killed her husband, Kobe Bryant, and their 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. In January 2020, Kobe and Gianna were on their way to Mamba Sports Academy, where Bryant was coaching his daughter's basketball team. The pilot became disoriented by clouds, then crashed into the hill near the Calabasas hillsides. 7 other people were on board, in addition to the Bryants that were killed. And still to come, first the spy balloon, now this. A look at what China-linked hackers were able to get their hands on. Plus, it seemed like Democrats and Republicans in Washington can't agree on much, but they do seem to be on the same page when it comes to TikTok. A look at the push for more bans on the app. That's coming up next.
TikTok is a modern-day Trojan horse of the CCP used to surveil and exploit Americans' personal information. It's a spy balloon in your phone.
If you're a lover of all things TikTok, then listen up. The House committee is expected to advance a bill that could ban the social media app nationwide. And this comes as the White House says the countdown is on. Federal agencies have 30 days to remove TikTok from all government devices, and this will end up affecting more than just 4 million government employees. The big question is why that's happening right now. Joining us to break that down is NBC's Jake Ward. Jake, I don't know if you heard that soundbite, but we heard heard TikTok called that Chinese spy balloon, but a spy balloon isn't driving our popular culture. Why does the U.S. see TikTok as such a security threat right now?
Well, Gandhi, what's so interesting here, is this moment we are in which we're looking at an app that, has just been a tidal wave in terms of its cultural influence, right? You've seen it account for twice the downloads of its nearest rival over the last 10 years, and that nearest rival is YouTube, right? This thing is just enormous. The specific liability we're talking about here with federal employees could be anything. We don't really know, but security experts we've been speaking to say that it could be, let's say a government employee is on their phone and is going back and forth between TikTok and some, secretive piece of information inside an app. Well, the way that some apps are designed, perhaps info leaks through those, right? TikTok also, like so many social media apps, grabs things like your face, your voice, your physical location at times. And so perhaps all of that is sensitive information that the government is worried about. We're not quite sure why it is they're so determined to ban it, but certainly they seem to believe that there could be sensitive information at risk here.
And we've seen different countries, we've seen universities, government agencies ban TikTok on their phones, but we also know that 2/3 of American teens use TikTok. This almost feels as though we are coming to a place where it's like you got a 13-year-old at home, and they're on their phone. You're going to have to take their phone away, possibly in the future, and it's just going to be an explosive fight. Do you really think that we could see a nationwide ban here in the United States of TikTok?
Well, as you and I are speaking right now, the House Foreign Affairs Committee is, in fact, voting on the possibility of giving Joe Biden the opportunity to actually do that, right? And so the legal precedent, however, is pretty shaky, right? We've never really seen anybody in the United States push to ban something as widely as this. I mean, you have to go back to prohibition of alcohol in the 1930s. I mean, 450,000 people a year in the United States die of cigarette smoke. You can still buy cigarettes here. We're not a country that tends to ban this kind of stuff. So it feels unlikely. On the other hand, right, this is a company connected to a Chinese parent company. There's new political fervor around this, and perhaps it's just the latest front in the war of words we're seeing between the U.S. and China.
And Jake, real fast, this is one of those issues where I actually see support on both sides of the aisle. Republicans and Democrats kind of calling for the same thing when they're calling for the removal of TikTok or possibly the banning of TikTok. But what is China saying about all this?
Well, what's interesting is that China, in a statement overnight last night through its foreign ministry, essentially made fun of the United States in a sense. It basically said that, it's the world's #1 superpower, and it's been made to feel insecure by an app popular with teenagers. It went on to say the U.S. government should respect the principles of market economy and fair competition, stop suppressing the companies, and provide an open, fair, and non-discriminatory environment for foreign companies in the U.S. Of course, when we spoke to foreign affairs experts, they point out that it's actually pretty common in China to ban whole social media platforms. It would be very strange to see that happen in the U.S., Gotti.
It's so interesting that they use the word insecure there. NBC's Jake Ward, thanks so much. And that spy balloon? Well, if you thought that was bad, wait till you hear about this report about China's computer hacking. CrowdStrike's annual global threat report reveals that China-linked cyber espionage groups have been targeting not just foreign adversaries, but private corporations as well. Specifically, a whopping 39 different industries on nearly every continent. Joining us now is NBC's Ken Delaney. And so, Ken, essentially, this sounds like the spy balloon was kind of small potatoes compared to this. What else did we learn in that report?
It was, Gotti, and this isn't really news to people in the intelligence community or in the national security world, but it's a good reminder for folks at home that China is constantly spying on the United States through hacking. They hack government agencies. They hack, more importantly, U.S. corporations and European corporations to steal intellectual property. This, according to U.S. officials. I can remember attending an event years ago where the head of the National Security Agency called this the greatest transfer of wealth in history because China is just pillaging intellectual property, trade secrets, corporate secrets, and they're using it to expand their own industries and things like solar panels or batteries for electric cars, and they're using it to beat American companies. It's having a real consequence. People are losing jobs over this, but unfortunately, as hard as companies have tried and the United States government has tried to shore up cybersecurity to keep these hackers out, they just haven't been able to do it. It's just really hard, particularly when you have intelligence agencies, which is what China is doing, breaking into corporate networks. It's really hard to defend against that, and China shows no signs of slowing down in this arena. Gotti.
And when you think of hacking, there's two different types that you come to mind. It's the attacks that kind of take down infrastructures, and I think that's how a lot of people think of hacking. And yet then there's this thief in the night approach, right, which is what it seems like we're seeing here. How much of that is actually being detected, and how much of that may be slipping through the cracks?
Well, you know, it's interesting. That's a great question, because a lot of it is detected by private corporations, cybersecurity vendors that all the Fortune 500 has on retainer, but we never hear about it, right? I mean, major corporations are hacked all the time. There's a saying in this world, you know, you're a corporation, you've either been hacked by China or you don't know you've been hacked by China. Like, everyone's been hacked by China. So, but we often don't hear about the repercussions. And, you know, you're absolutely right. Look, the U.S. has cyber weapons. China has cyber weapons. The U.S. hacks for spying purposes. So does China. This is different. The U.S. does not try to steal Chinese corporation secrets for economic gain, and China does that, again, according to U.S. officials. China obviously denies that, and that's a real, that's a big deal, and it shows no signs of slowing down, Gotti.
You've either been hacked or you don't know you've been hacked. That's a very scary prospect. Kendallanian, thanks so much.
You bet.
And coming up, a major breakthrough in the case of the lady in the fridge, how the mystery was solved nearly 3 decades after her body was found. But first, you gotta see this. The city of New York puts a new sign out on Sunday marking the Jackie Robinson Parkway in Queens, and talk about a swing and a miss. The name of the Hall of Famer was misspelled. You can see here the C in Jackie. Well, actually, you can't, because that C is nowhere to be seen. The City Department of Transportation replaced the sign with a corrected version. We'll be right back. It's time now for some of the big headlines we're watching tonight. FDA advisors are recommending the agency approve the world's first RSV vaccine. They say the Pfizer shot, which would be for adults 60 and up, reduces the risk of illness by as much as 86%. Here in California, the COVID-19 emergency officially ends today. It comes almost 3 years after Governor Gavin Newsom issued the country's first statewide stay-at-home order. And California detectives finally identified the remains of a woman known as the lady in the fridge nearly 30 years later. Her identity was found through the help of modern-day technology in what was once a cold case murder. The killer is still unknown, but authorities are offering tens of thousands of dollars for information leading to the arrest of anyone responsible for her death. In southern Colorado, at least 3 people were killed in recent avalanches, including a snowmobiler and 2 backcountry skiers. A local avalanche center is now warning the danger level for an avalanche is expected to rise and become more widespread until Thursday. And the FAA is investigating a close call between 2 flights at Boston's Logan Airport. As a JetBlue flight was getting ready to land Monday, a Learjet flight took off without clearance. Earlier this month, the FAA said it would form a safety review team after a bunch of recent close calls. Over in South Carolina, the jury in the Alec Murdaugh case is now preparing for a much-anticipated field trip tomorrow to the Murdaugh family estate, where the bodies of Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were discovered in June of 2021. But before that, they sat through one final day of testimony today as state prosecutors brought back their star witness to the stand. Now, the goal was to rebut parts of Murdaugh's defense and to reiterate the state's findings so far. Here's one testimony by a crime scene expert outrightly rejecting the defense's argument about the potential for the height of the shooter.
In your professional opinion, can you exclude a 6'4" defendant like Alec Murdaugh, or anyone for that matter at that height, from shooting that shotgun at that angle?
Absolutely not.
When the defense expert says that the shooter has to be between 5'2" and 5'4", do you disagree with that?
I do disagree with that wholeheartedly.
And the day also had its share of tense moments, especially during the testimony of a former colleague and friend of Alec Murdaugh, who the defense accused of lying.
I would take high offense with that, Mr. Harpootlian.
I'm concerned about your high offense. Are you angry at him for stealing your money?
I have no feeling one way or the other.
I don't have any feeling about Alec Murdaugh betraying you and stealing your money. I admire you. I don't know that I could look beyond that.
Objection, Your Honor. And NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber joins me now. Ellison, what else did we hear from witnesses, and did we see the prosecution try to poke more holes in other theories put forward by the defense yesterday? We heard the defense put forth that theory that there might be two shooters here.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of layers to today's testimony. The prosecution, the state, they called 7 different witnesses, all of them focused on rebutting what defense witnesses and experts had previously testified. There was one moment where they had the former sheriff of Hampton County take the stand, and he seemed to rebut something that Alec Murdaugh said on the stand when he testified. Remember, he talked about trying to address why he lied about being at the kennel before Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were killed. He'd said that part of the reason why he lied was because he felt paranoid because of his drug use, and that he also had a long history, he said, of not trusting law enforcement. When he made that point, the state was very quick to bring up photos and other evidence they said showed he had a good relationship with law enforcement. He carried around a badge that said he was a solicitor that kind of looked like a police badge. He also said he had blue lights on his car, something he claimed had been approved by sheriff deputies and the sheriff in Hampton County. But then we heard from the former sheriff today. Listen to what he said.
I never had a conversation with Alec Murdaugh. Matter of fact, I never had a conversation with anyone in my 39 years about installing blue lights in their personal vehicles.
That's not something that's done, is it, sir?
Oh, no, no.
Alec Murdaugh repeatedly admitted on the stand that he has lied a lot throughout his life, that he has lied at some points in this case, but he said that kennel video claiming that he wasn't at the kennel, that was the only lie he told throughout this investigation. The prosecution had this witness on the stand seemingly to imply, no, he lied then and he's still lying now. Gotti?
And Ellison, I know the jury is heading out to the family estate tomorrow. I imagine they're going to be seeing the kennel. They're going to be seeing the layout of the house. What do you think they're going to be looking for? Again, yesterday's introduction of that two-shooter scenario, I imagine is something that they might be trying to gauge in their mind. But what do you think they're going to be looking for as they tour the house there?
Right, so it's interesting because they're going to see these places that they have heard about, the kennel, the feed room, places like that, but they're not going to be able to ask any questions at all. From the moment they leave the court to the moment they get back, they're not allowed to ask any questions. They're not allowed to talk to each other. The judge has said what will happen tomorrow is they will start court, then you will have the jurors get into a van escorted by law enforcement agents. They will head to Moselle. They will have about 30 minutes to look around the scene. Again, no questions, no talking. Then they will return to the vans, and the press will be able to go out for about 30 minutes and see what the jury saw, and then they'll all head back here. Then presumably we expect closing arguments to start after that. But this will be a really interesting visit. We won't be able to see what juries are seeing in real time. So we won't be able to see their reaction, but we will be able to see what they have seen. One other interesting nugget, Gotti, we don't expect Alec Murdaugh to go with them to Moselle. A court official told us earlier today that they believe he will either stay at the county jail in holding there, or they will put him in a holding cell in the basement of the courthouse here. We understand, our colleagues at NBC have heard that perhaps Alec Murdaugh's attorneys are going to ask for permission for him to go, but we think that might be more of a formality versus something that he actually intends to do. We've been told by court officials he will not go when the jury goes. Gotti?
What a silent and ominous walkthrough that they're going to have tomorrow. Ellison, thanks so much. And 4 years ago, Chicagoans elected Lori Lightfoot to office. She made history as the city's first black woman mayor and first openly gay mayor as well. And tonight she is fighting to keep her position after a tough few years. Crime is a massive issue on a lot of voters' minds right now. A recent Northwestern poll found that 57% think that it's the most important issue, followed by inflation and wages. And for the first time ever, Chicago will elect police district council members. It's a new reform being implemented after years of protests about police misconduct. NBC's Marissa Parra joins us now from the Windy City. Gotta ask, how much of this election is actually a referendum on crime?
Well, we're certainly hearing the word crime many, many times throughout this race here. I mean, both on the side of the candidates and people that are voting. So we had a chance to speak to voters. You saw the polls yourself, those issues polls in terms of what people care about the most. And crime has consistently been at the top of those lists across the board, across demographics. This isn't just something that we're seeing nationally. We're seeing it locally here in Chicago, too, obviously. So we had a chance to speak to voters as they were coming out of the polling places, telling us what issues they cared the most about, and their answers will probably not surprise you.
Keeping the violence down in Chicago, that's my main issue.
Just deciding what to do about crime.
I think Chicago struggled more than other cities in terms of recovering financially and economically, and some of that's attached to the crime piece.
So when it comes to crime specifically, Chicago has had a rough go of it in the last few years. This is something that many cities across the country have been seeing, Gotti. So no surprise that crime, again, a big issue when it comes to races, both locally and nationally. Gotti?
And I know things are close. I got to ask, tonight, do you think we'll have an answer, or do you think we could be looking at a runoff?
That's the million-dollar question tonight that everyone wants to know. And I got to be honest, I don't think we're going to have an answer tonight. This is me just looking into the crystal ball. I think when you think about just the sheer scope of the candidates, you have 9 different candidates, and several of them are neck and neck, and not just the polling in the days leading up to this election day, but even now as the votes are starting to trickle in, those results are starting to trickle in, we're seeing narrow margins for second place. Paul Vallis consistently seeming to be on the leaderboard in terms of the #1 spot, but it is narrow margins for that second place spot between incumbent Mayor Lori Lightfoot and 2 other candidates here. And the thing to remember here, Gotti, is early voting turnout was massive. Those mail-in numbers were massive. 99,000 ballots still unaccounted for when it comes to mail-in voting. So I think that could be the biggest issue when it comes to delays in results. So it could be some time before we even know if there's a runoff and who it's between. But it's looking likely that there will be a runoff.
That's quite a bit of counting tonight. Marissa Parra, thanks so much. And just about everything seems a lot more expensive these days. So to make extra cash, some college students are starting influencer side hustles. We're going to show you how. And there could be another time zone, but get this, it'll be on the moon. Former astronaut Mike Massimino joins us next, so stay tuned. And a little earlier in the show, we talked about the Supreme Court cases challenging President Biden's Student Loan Forgiveness Act. And while millions, tens of millions turn to student loans to pay their college tuitions, it's not really the only way to make ends meet these days. Some students are taking on full-time jobs as social media influencers while still in school. And our team sat down with 3 TikTokers who are swapping textbooks for tripods.
Welcome to the life of a college student in 2023. Classes, exams, and a potentially lucrative side job in the world of social media.
It's the day in the life of a Harvard student with ADHD.
Good morning, guys. Get ready with me for my first day of school.
Let's get ready for class. I think I'm gonna wear this.
Meet Jordan, Clark, and Darcy. They are social media influencers currently working to get their bachelor's degrees, and the three have a combined total of 1.8 million followers on TikTok and over 117 million likes.
Last week we hit 1 million on here, so this is my Instagram post to celebrate.
And they're not alone. Across the country, college students are capitalizing on the opportunity to create their own personal brands. For Jordan, her brand is educational content.
This is how to ace your college interview.
Offering study tips and tricks on how to get into college. Darcy and Clark focus their posts on beauty, fashion, and lifestyle content.
Hey guys, come with me for my second day of classes as a content creator and senior at Columbia during New York Fashion Week.
A survey by LendingTree found that 44% of Americans have a side hustle, and leading the pack with the side gig, Gen Zers at 62%. According to influencer trade journal TubeFilter, TikTok pays between 2 and 4 cents for every 1,000 views, but the real money is in brand partnerships.
Here is my huge Amazon haul for the month. Let's start unboxing. Amazon reached out to me this summer after my sophomore year of college and said, hey, we see you're posting for us. Like, do you want to be a part of our commission program, which comes with creating an Amazon storefront? So I created my storefront, and you can make all these different lists. So I have, for example, a shoes list or pants or going out tops, and I can put all my favorite stuff in there.
Okay guys, I'm so excited. I have the most beautiful pieces to show you guys from Princess Polly. I don't have a tally of it, but there have been so many with brands that I've just loved and were used for pretty much my entire life. So it's very surreal being able to work with them in this capacity for sure.
According to Shopify, brands will pay influencers on TikTok anywhere from $800 to more than $7,000 a post, depending on how many followers they have. And while it might seem like the life of an influencer is nothing but perks, it does have downfalls.
If you want to become an influencer, you have to have thick skin because people are going to get online. People are mean.
It was definitely hard, I think, starting out and getting hate comments and crazy messages.
Or just people in general saying I didn't deserve to be at Harvard because my SAT wasn't high enough, or my GPA wasn't high enough, or all this stuff.
I have seen TikToks about people saying oh yeah, I don't like Darcy because her voice is too low.
I don't want to tie my self-worth or value to the number of likes, comments, shares, views.
You just can't take everything too seriously. Take it for what it is, have fun with it, enjoy yourself, and connect to the people that want to connect with you, and then the rest of them, just leave them.
When it comes to college, there's no major in influencing, at least not yet. And student influencers say it can be difficult to figure out your path while it feels like the world is watching.
So I will have my PR degree when I graduate. As of right now, I'm going to continue to do social media and do TikTok as I'm doing now because I am able to make a living off of it, which is amazing. And I'm so grateful for that opportunity to be able to do this.
I feel like my life will be forever impacted because of my TikTok influencing experience. Probably go back to business school, do finance, maybe. I don't know. I'm a math physics girl, so I feel like that might be a nice intersection of it.
I was actually getting a bit of pushback, I would say, from my followers online who sort of thought that I was diverting my path to do this content thing as opposed to sticking to my law school goals. So I'm definitely taking 1 year off when I graduate before going to law school. This is the time to seize this opportunity and really push ahead with all of my content goals. And law school will always be there. I really want to enjoy this time while I can and while I have the audience and the community who's really excited about what I have to offer.
Okay, real quick, do you know what time it is right now? How about what time it is in London or Sydney or good old, we don't change our clocks for nobody, Arizona? Well, time zones can get complicated. And if you're wondering what time it is on the moon, that is a very good question with a very complicated answer. Turns out the moon doesn't have its own time zone just yet, but the European Space Agency wants to change that. Joining us now is someone who knows all about space-time, former astronaut Mike Massimino, who is now the senior advisor at the Intrepid Museum. Hi, Mike. Let's start at the very beginning. What is time? Just kidding, but kind of not really. Isn't time a measurement that we use here based on the sun and the day and the night and stuff? What is time when we're measuring it here on Earth versus the moon?
Yeah, and Gotti, thanks for having me. I kind of like this topic because it's interesting. For me, anyway, as an astronaut, really what time is, as far as the space program goes, astronauts and the people in the control center, it's just a way to measure what needs to be done next, really. At what time are we going to rendezvous? At what time are we going to do our spacewalks? At what time are we going to bed? At what time are we doing this experiment? and you really follow the plan, the timeline, really closely. So time, for me as an astronaut, was when do I do what next? What is the right time to do this next thing? How much time do I have to the next event? And that's what it really is for astronauts in space, and particularly when we were orbiting around the planet like my friends are doing right now on the space station. You're going around the planet every 90 minutes. To go across country from California to Florida takes about 11 minutes. So you're going to be resetting that watch all the time. So we used to go by mission elapsed time on the space shuttle to know what to do when.
And here on Earth, we do have universal time, right? And universal, you got space already in the name there. Wouldn't it be easier to just use that?
We do, actually. So for the space shuttle, Gotti would use mission elapsed time, which meant it started as soon as you launched. So 1 second after launch was mission elapsed time 1 second, and then you would go for how many hours? 24 hours. Then it was 1 day. But on the space station, because it was controlled with control centers around the world, in Houston, in Moscow, in Japan, in Europe, because of that, they decided to have one time zone that would be for the space station, and that is universal time. So the space station is on universal time.
And Mike, this part is probably going to break my brain, so take it easy on me. But I was reading that time itself moves differently on the moon. Clocks somehow gain roughly like 56 microseconds every day. What the what?
Yeah, that's not very much. I wouldn't worry about that so much. That's really not very much time. But what it is, it's just that because the gravitational attraction of the moon is 1/6 the gravitational force we have on Earth, that means that clocks will run differently. But the way we get around that, and in fact, there's something in orbit around the moon, the clock will operate a little bit differently than the one on the moon versus the one on a clock on Earth. But we can synchronize that stuff. So that's what we do, for example, on the space station, is we are constantly synchronizing clocks. They just need to make a decision of what they want to do on the moon. And I get the hunch that the Europeans may have one opinion and the Americans might have another, so we'll see how it turns out. But yeah, you're right. If you're really exact about it, there is a slight difference in the way a clock will work, but you can sync those up so you're not late for anything.
And we just showed a graphic that was also really interesting. It was, I think, 1 lunar day. Wait, no. Yeah. 1 lunar day is 29 Earth days, and that's because of the rotation and the gravitational lock. Is that right?
It's just how long it takes for one rotation to be made. Like we measure a day for one of our orbit, a rotation of the Earth completely, a complete rotation, and that's the moon relative to us is rotating at the same speed that it's following us. So that's why if you look at a 1 day, we consider like a sunrise and a sunset, a one rotation of the planet. It's longer for the moon. But that, we're not going to go by that. I don't think anyone wants to go with a 29-day. No. I'd be shocked if they go with the lunar day, because the thing is, it's not just the astronauts on the moon, it's the control centers on the ground. And that needs to be in sync. You need to be in lockstep with these different control centers for the space station around the planet, and maybe for the moon as well. There'll be control centers all over the place. So I think we're going to be working on some sort of 24-hour clock, and whether it's Greenwich Mean Time or Houston time or whatever they come up with, I don't think we're going to go with that 29.5-day time. That's too complicated.
I don't know, Mike. I have a little one at home, and a 29-day nap sounds like so delicious right now.
Yeah, that kid would have a lot of energy, though, when he woke up.
Yeah. Mike, thanks so very much for joining us.
My pleasure, Gotti.
And after the break, for non-smokers, a lung cancer diagnosis could come as a complete shock. But new robotic technology is creating hope for a lot of Americans. That story when we come back. Now, this is a stat we all hope is going to drop to zero in our lifetime, but as it stands right now, nearly 2 million people in the U.S. will be diagnosed with cancer this year. And when it comes to lung cancer, specifically, the prognosis is often grim. But there is some hope on the horizon thanks to advanced technology and early detection, and NBC's Dana Griffin has more.
So this story is very personal for me. My mom passed away 3 years ago to lung cancer. And the one thing she and so many others have in common, they never smoked and didn't know they had it until it was too late. But with new technology comes new hope. Inside this Los Angeles County operating room called City of Hope, hope is exactly what they're trying to give patients with lung cancer. This comprehensive cancer center is one of the first on the West Coast to perform a robotic bronchoscopy.
Lateral, yeah, go lateral, not too far.
Here's how it works. Thoracic surgery chief Dr. Jay Kim threads a long, flexible camera that can navigate through even the tiniest branches of the airway.
This is telling me how far I am from the tumor.
Looking for the elusive cancer cells hard to detect on normal scans. Within minutes, this less invasive procedure can biopsy tissue later tested for cancer, putting patients closer to treatment to destroy the disease. The stats are sobering. More people in the U.S. die from lung cancer than breast, colon, and prostate cancers combined. What should people know about lung cancer?
There's a stigma attached to it. So when you hear someone has lung cancer, often the question is, well, did they smoke? Just because someone smoked doesn't mean that they deserve to get lung cancer. But also there are so many people who get lung cancer who have never smoked.
For women diagnosed with lung cancer, Dr. Kim says 20% have never smoked, and it's more likely to develop in African-American women, like 55-year-old Devon Swift.
Lung cancer is serious, and I didn't even know I had it.
She's a mother who has worked for American Airlines for 34 years, lugging pounds of baggage. Her 2021 diagnosis, her heaviest load yet.
I had an ongoing cough that just will not go away. And a very close friend of mine said, get dressed, I'm coming to pick you up and take you to the ER. I'm glad she did, because they did an x-ray and they saw a spot.
She saved your life.
Oh my goodness, when you put it that way. She did, because the doctor said, in my case, they caught it early, and normally it doesn't get detected until it's like stage 4.
But with the help of Dr. Kim and City of Hope, Devon's cancer was detected early, and now she's cancer-free.
If you look at cancers that are detected with lung cancer screening, over 90% of them are cured.
So there's hope there.
Absolutely.
Now Devon holds on to this hospital teddy bear she got when she went through treatment. A reminder that prevention can be the new cure. What's your message to someone who may have a cough like yours?
Please just take the time out to go get checked. It will save your life. Trust me, it will save your life like it saved mine.
So listen to this. Only about 6% of eligible people actually get screened. Dr. Kim says part of that is lack of awareness. So he's urging people, if you've ever smoked in your life, even if you quit, talk to your doctor about getting screened. It could be like Devon, catch it early and live for years to come. Back to you.
And hopefully save a life. That does it for us. I'm Gotti Schwartz for Now Tonight. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.